Quick question, why do we hate seeing and hearing ourselves on video? But first, let's ask this guy. Which version of me looks more like me? Me or me? But maybe the real question we should be asking is, which version of me do I prefer to see on video? Well, in this video, we're going to be breaking down the top 3 reasons why you probably hate seeing and hearing yourselves on video. G'day, I'm Ben Amos from Engage Video Marketing, and on this channel I share tips, tricks and strategies to help you engage your ideal audience through effective video marketing. And in this video, I'm going to help you get more confident seeing and hearing yourself on camera, because I know when most of us first see ourselves on camera or in photos or hear the recording of our own voice, we cringe. And there are 3 very real scientific reasons why that is. And first of all, the fact is that the you that you see on camera is actually not the real you. It's not the version of you that everybody else sees and hears. This is because of 3 key things, and they're physiological but also psychological reasons. So let's break down these 3 reasons. Reason number 1 is the mere exposure effect, which describes our tendency to develop preferences for things simply because we are familiar with them. For this reason, it's also known as the familiarity principle. This effect was first studied by American social psychologist Robert Zajonc in 1968. In his experiments, Zajonc tested how subjects responded to made-up words and Chinese characters. Subjects were actually shown in the experiment the characters a number of different times, and then they were tested on their attitudes towards those characters. Zajonc found that the subjects who were shown these words the most also responded the most favorably to them. You see, as humans, we've evolved to become more favorable to those things that we are most familiar with, and it's actually probably kept us alive. Think back to caveman days as we were running around the Sahara and we were familiar with the rock being there and the tree being there and the light coming in from the cave mouth where we took shelter as being a certain way. But if things were different, if it was unfamiliar, then the fight or flight instinct would have kicked in and we would have got out of there because potentially we were in danger. And the same thing is happening when we're looking at ourselves on camera. Now let me explain. The mere exposure effect and this idea of the familiarity principle responds to the idea that every day we are waking up and looking at a mirrored image of ourselves when we look into the mirror. So we get up every morning and we get dressed in the morning and we do our hair, and then we look at ourselves and we are familiar with the way that we look. Whether we like it or not, we accept the way that we look. However, the way that we look as perceived by ourselves is actually a mirrored image. And because we see this same mirrored image time and time again every single day, we become more familiar with that. We perceive that that's how we look. Now, when we're recording video and we're watching ourselves back, we're looking at what people actually perceive us to look like, but to us, we're used to seeing the mirrored image of ourselves. So the mere exposure effect is actually meaning that what we see on camera is a slightly different, slightly varied version of what we're used to seeing. The fact is, no one's face is symmetrical, so the mirrored image is slightly, but often imperceptibly different to what we're used to seeing. Reason number 2 is we're actually not used to hearing the sound of our real voice. And this comes down to a bit of science about how sound travels into our ear canals. As we speak, the air travels out from our vocal cords and through our lips and mouth, out through the air via a process called air conduction through to the ears or the microphone of the person listening or the recording device that we're being recorded on. What we actually hear in our own heads is a combination of air conduction, which is the voice coming out of our mouth and into our own ears, and combining that with bone conduction, because our voice is resonating within our own skull, within our own bones, within our head. So our ears internally are hearing a combination of the sound that's reverberating out around our head and the sound that's coming through air back into our ear canals.
So the way we perceive our voice is often a little bit deeper, with more resonance and at a deeper tone than what we actually sound like.
So when we listen to our recording of our voice back on video or on a recording of some sort, then often we have that cringe factor and we turn to someone and say, do I actually sound like that? And yes, you do actually sound like that. The mere exposure effect is also at play here because as we hear ourselves talk every single day, we're hearing that internal version of our own voice. So we become more familiar with that and therefore we favor that tone of our voice more than the real tone of our voice, which we hear playing back to us on video. And reason number 3 why we often hate seeing and hearing ourselves on camera is something called confirmation bias. Now, confirmation bias is the idea that we have a tendency as humans to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms or supports one's prior beliefs or values. So what that means effectively is we see and hear what we expect to see and hear. If we go into a video shoot being self-conscious about the way our hair looks or the skin, or maybe we're feeling internally that we've put on a bit of weight, so what are we going to focus on when we look back at the video? Absolutely, we're going to focus on those things that confirm our biases towards our own opinion. Whether it be fact or whether it just be in our heads, this idea of confirmation bias means that we're often subconsciously thinking about things or responding to things in a way that factually often isn't even true. So how do we overcome this fear of seeing and hearing ourselves on camera? Well, the reality is, despite the physiological and psychological reasons that we now understand, the most practical way to get over this fear is to simply take imperfect action. By showing up on camera, by getting used to seeing and hearing ourselves on video, the fact is the mere exposure effect can be used for good instead of evil. So we'll end up getting used to and familiar with the version of us that we see on camera that everybody else sees when we show up in life. We can overcome this fear of being on camera and seeing ourselves on camera, which in many cases are unfounded fears in the first place. So I'd love to hear from you. What holds you back when you're getting on camera? What fears, whether they be founded or unfounded fears, are preventing you from showing up confidently on camera? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And if you've found this video interesting and useful to you, hit that thumbs up button, hit subscribe so you don't miss another video. And then after this, I want you to watch this video right here next, where we go a bit deeper into how to present confidently on camera. I'll see you in that video real soon.